Evening all and welcome back to the VSI pub. Lockdown continues, sport continues to debate when we'll be back playing, but tonight we've got the dream team of John Walters and Rob Huth back together, sharing a few stories and insights into some of the lighter and more humorous side of being a professional footballer. In the snub, we've got Brian Dean with Tony Dorigo. But until then, I'm going to hand you over to Tim, who will explain how the guys on the platform can ask a couple of questions to both Rob and to John moving forward. Tim?
Thanks, Tony. Either use the Q&A answers, which you can put your hand up and we'll answer those as we're going along if it's really relevant, or we'll bring them up with the best couple a little bit later on as we're finishing, or use the chat room so everybody else can see what's been asked. So without further ado, Mr. Caulfield, it's over to you, sir, over in the Shankly Arms.
Welcome to the Shankly Arms. I don't think that's going to go down well, Robert Huth, because I don't think he likes Liverpool, and it won't go down well, I'm sure, with John Walters. I think he's an Evertonian, but we'll find out in a minute. There have been some great double acts over the years. We can go Eric and Ern, Anton Deck, Lennon and McCartney. We can go Wood and Walters, but I'm going one better. I'll raise you 10. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I've got Huth and Walters. I mean, the ring of it. It could be solicitors, or it could be two of the best footballers of recent years, because you've got Robert Huth, who is, I think, he's played the most games in the Premier League for any German in the history of the Premier League so far, and won it 3 times. And I had the pleasure of knowing Robert Middlesbrough back in 1964 when he started out in his career. And I know him now on the VSI Sports Directorship course, and he never fails to win and put me down. So I'm getting out of his way. On the other side, you got John Walters, who played 100 games more than Robert Huth because he was fitter and he ran more and he did more work. And he was in that Stoke team with Robert Huth that did amazing things for so many years, defied the odds, and actually, underneath it all, were just a rattling good team. So, John, good evening. Rob, good evening. How are you both?
Good afternoon, yeah. Not bad. I thought I left it all behind you when I left Middlesbrough. I never thought I'd have to work with you again, but...
No, you can't escape me. As I always said, and in both games for Middlesbrough, I thought you were absolutely outstanding. And by the way, that is some haircut. That's not a haircut.
Is that positive or negative?
Oh, it's positive because I'm not arguing with you. But the better looking fella is John. John, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. As you said, not many people can pull off the haircut and Rob can't. So I had it for about 10 years and Stoke.
It's changing up.
Well, listen, we haven't got that long tonight because we've got time for a quick pint. And listen, it's good to see you both again, and you, Rob. But there was something about that Stoke team, and there's a lot of books written out there on teamwork. There's a lot of stuff said about teams and motivation and psychology. But actually that team of Begovic and Sorensen and Huth and Wilson and Shawcross and Kenwyn Jones and John Carew, and he even had a bit of Michael Owen at some point. And then you two were in the thick of it for a few seasons. Rob, I'm going to start with you. What is it about your mate, John Walters, and what was it about that team? Because you lot must have run it, not 14 coaches. What was it about that time at Stoke?
I think most of the players had like a point to prove at their point in the career. You know, I just got relegated with Middlesbrough, as you kindly mentioned earlier. Thank you for that.
I was responsible too, don't worry.
And same with Johnny. We bought John from Ipswich, you know, sort of he had a point to prove. And when you have, you know, like 10, 15 players like that, you know, just biting at the opportunity to play in the Premier League, that's what we had. Alongside, we had a manager who made sure that we were on it every day, that we didn't take football for granted, playing in front of thousands of people. You know, we got reminded daily that we were privileged, and not always the prettiest way of playing, but I think it was always fully committed, which, you know, when you play for a team like Stoke, then, you know, you get the love straight away.
I think it's prettier than you give yourself credit for. John, what was it like for you just joining that group? Because something clicked there, didn't it? It just clicked, and it stayed that way.
To be fair, yeah, Rob's right. I think TP Tony used to say it was like Battersea Dogs Home. He had all the strays in from everywhere, and it was everyone. Rob's right. Everyone had a point to prove. Everyone worked for each other, and it was in we used to love playing. We used to love teams coming to play us at our stadium, hating it every time, and everyone. And the more it went on, the longer it went on, the more it became something that everyone really hated. Everyone talked about going there, and we sort of played to that, I think, really, as well. I think I think towards the back end as well, it sort of they tried to change a little bit in terms of I think signing different types of players, and you're trying to change the football, but I think you're trying to change the image of the club really. I think they could have went the opposite way and sort of went towards like some of the old NFL teams, the Raiders. Then when you were younger, everyone hated them, and it was one of those teams that I think you could have went down that route with Stoke, but we sort of changed it. But for those years we were there together, it was brilliant.
John, what dog would you be if you weren't a Battersea dog home? What dog would you have been?
I'd be a Vizsla, Rob, because we've got two
a Vizsla, yeah. Not like a British bulldog or something, huh? Just
you'd be a lurcher, I think, like a lurcher.
I'd have to be a German Shepherd. Yeah.
Rob, what dog have you got now? Because you had Walter when I first knew you, and he's no longer with us. What have you got now? You must have.
I don't really want to share what kind of dog I've got here. It's not really. I've got a cockapoo.
Name?
Yeah. Hey?
What's the name of the cockapoo?
Buddy.
Buddy. Aged what?
4. But yeah, it's just not comfortable taking 4 walks. So I'll make sure it's when it's dark or like in the middle of the woods, when no one can see me. Because I was like, what is he doing with that?
And listen, if that team got together again tomorrow night, which I know it can't, but if it did, would you just sit up late into the night exchanging old stories about what you got up to and how good it was and the friendships you had at that time?
I would just carry on the same, I think, Rob, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Definitely stay up into late into the night, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a great friendship group, was it? I mean, we all got on, don't get me wrong, but it's first and foremost as professional, wasn't it? Like everyone wanted to do well and respected each other's sort of will to do well. But it wasn't all friends. I mean, we had plenty of fights and arguments and you name it. It's probably there wasn't a week gone by where there wasn't a fight in training, was it? Or like at least handbags, as they say.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we just met up for breakfast and had a nice coffee, and changing rooms can be brutal, can't they? For all we sit here now and say how wonderful it was, but it was unforgiving, isn't it? If you don't pull your weight, we had 10, 12 players being on your case when you don't do it. Which is like we said earlier, that's what I think that team sort of thrived on it. Of the honesty of it.
But was it the most competitive environment you played in?
I think the most unforgiving, yeah. As in, like, if you didn't do your job to 95% of your capabilities, there'd be someone having hard work with you, and that's sort of spread throughout the club. Whether it was the physios or the coaches or the players, if you didn't do your job, that wasn't acceptable. It really wasn't. So yeah, I mean, there weren't too many days where we sort of had an easy day of training or even games.
Rob, I mean this as a compliment because I got to know you a little bit at Middlesbrough, and you were a young man. You just come from Chelsea for a good fee, and part of my skill over the years was working with injured athletes. And you got injured a few times, and it just held you back, and you couldn't play enough. And then you went to Stoke, and I followed you at Stoke, and you barely missed a game in the season. I think you played 40 odd games in the season. Did your mindset change, and not just the physical side? Did something else change you that thought, I've got to get out here and play for Tony Pulis or else I won't get a game? Did something else just trigger in your mind to get you that fit? Because you never missed a game hardly.
That was a combination of things. I think, first of all, the physios, the doctors, the setup was very good at Stoke anyway. So they looked after me straight away. And they were just a bit more sort of smarter the way that they treated me in terms of what my program would be like week to week. I think that was the case. They didn't hammer me every day physically, or it was very much all about the Saturday. I remember Tony Pulis going, Rob, I don't give a shit if you cycle all week, but I just want you to play on a Saturday night, on a Saturday. So that was sort of the attitude. It's all about the weekend rather than a training. And at Middlesbrough, something I felt, I lost energy just training. I just got flogged. And then when I went to Stoke, the approach was completely different. You don't get 3 points whilst training, do you? And that was sort of the attitude from the guys. I said, listen, I just make sure you're fit for Saturday. And what you do in a week is sort of irrelevant.
And John, we can get in this country easily seduced, and people get almost the wrong impression. But you must have also really respected the way in which Tony Pulis managed you and coached you as well.
Yeah, I had a debt of gratitude to him because he was after me for a few years as well. And when I was at Ipswich, I think I was at Ipswich for 4 or 5 years, and I nearly went every transfer window to a team. But there was people ringing me up every transfer window saying, Tony's been asking about you, Tony's been asking about this, asking about that. And I went, and I had, as I said, a massive point to prove, but he showed faith in me plenty of times as well. Plenty of times about bad games, or I was playing out really on the right most of the time, which I never was. I was always a striker and I was playing out right midfield, but I ran a lot and worked for everyone else around me. And you know, not many managers would recognise that. Your strikers in a way will get the goals, but sometimes if you're playing wide, if you're not producing or you're not doing this or not doing that, they like to bring flair players. And in every transfer window saying that, they probably signed someone to replace me. But he was always very good with me. He looked after me quite a few times because I went and must have signed 4 or 5 contracts under him as well. So he was brilliant.
He loved you. He absolutely loved you. Loved
Why,
child.
Rob, why did he love him? Why did he love him, Rob? Go on.
Well, just like his son, wasn't it? He put his arm around and that was it. Well, just a hard work, wasn't it? Like we all know a teammate that sort of goes beyond, his efforts, and John was one of them, there wasn't anything left on the pitch, and I think Pulis just appreciated that sort of player. So it was the match made in heaven, wasn't it, John?
To be fair, I would never moan. He'd move me and I'd start up front, and then I'd play behind Kenwyn, and then I'll move to the right, then I'll move to the left, then I'll move back to the middle, back up top during a game. I would never moan. I'd just get on with it. I was just happy to be playing. And I'd sacrifice myself in a lot of games, running around a lot, putting the effort in, and making runs for other people and stuff like that. So a lot of stuff that goes unseen, but he seemed to recognise it. So it was good. Very
You
good.
worked that out for yourself, John. But I heard a line years ago from I think you're an Evertonian by heart, as it were. But Stephen Gerrard once said something which I've never forgotten. He said, "Always give a manager 5 reasons to pick you." He said, because a lot of players give a manager 5 reasons to drop them. And were you one of those who would give a coach reasons to pick you by playing in different positions? And
I just would never leave any stone unturned. And Robert know this. We'd be in the gym together for an hour and a half before training, an hour and a half afterwards. We'd never leave anything that we couldn't do. We get every last drop out of us. But then in playing a match, I think I started at Ipswich, moving over to the right, purely through work rate, I think. And most of that time for Stoke, Tony, used to play, Rob played right back for a lot of times, but it was almost 4 centre halves, and the wingmen were like a right back and left back. So you'd have a back 6 almost. But I'd expect to be defending my own 18-yard box for most of the game, but then be getting up the other end as well. So, but I'll do that, and I'll do that without a moan. Where other lads would either throw in an injury, you find a lot of lads will, if it's difficult and the game's not going their way, they probably find it best if they're not on the pitch. And say it's a Chelsea or Arsenal at home, or a big one at home, think we're going to get beat here, and you sort of throw one in or start walking around because they get subbed off. I'd never do that. I felt like he always had something to prove, and I'd always give everything I had, no matter what.
do you think this is a serious question to your mate Robert Huth? Do you think he'll make one day, because through VSI, do you think he's got all the ingredients of a sporting director?
Yeah.
No. No.
To be fair, with Rob, you get what you get. So he'll say how it is, and there's not many people like that in football. A lot of people don't like that as well. There's a lot of people that will and it's in any walk of life, any job. A lot of people will play towards the person that's leading them. Will play towards them, or not make the right decisions because they want to get close. And we all know those people that almost suck up to the people that are above them just to be in that position and stay in that position. Rob will just say how it is, and that might go against you, but eventually you'll go against it sometimes because people won't like it, as you said, going back into the football world. But eventually you'll find someone that will appreciate that as well. And I think the best clubs, and the best clubs I've been at, or the best people will accept someone like that telling them exactly how it should be. And there's no, if it's wrong, Rob will say it's wrong. He won't beat around the bush or anything like that, or go down a different route just to please someone. What's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong. And that's, I think, what's the best people in football are like.
Because the sporting directorship role is the role of the future. That's why the course is so popular. And Rob, can I ask you a question about your friend John Walters then? Do you think he'd make a good CEO? Because he's clearly look, not just you've got a nice filing cabinet there and a smart office, by the way, Rob, and you haven't. You're sat there in your living room with a pint. But do you think John would make a good CEO and a good sport, or a good CEO?
I think it's the case of whatever John wants to do, and he puts his head to it. It doesn't need to be a CEO, whatever, in a year's time he sort of nails a job done, whatever it may be. I'm sure he'll be good at it, at any job, because I know John is very driven, very focused, determined, and disciplined. So if John, if you think you're going to be a CEO, then I'm sure you eventually get there. But same as any other thing, if you want to do something different and you put your mind to it, then you're going to get there. Because, like I said, you had obstacles thrown in your way all your career, and you sort of done it. So, we're here now, different part of our careers now. So just need to get on with it. Same as we did at football.
Rob, I know. Listen, you can't dress it up. You won 3 Premier League titles. You played for your country. You had a great career when fit. How are you finding it now, being a student, handing in dissertations, studying to be a sporting director? Because that's your next ambition. Because you're competitive. I know that in everything you do. How are you finding the transition into studying with VSI? Yeah,
I mean, it's very difficult and different to what I've been used to. Football is very physical. You don't really, people tell you what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And now we're doing this course, or I'm doing this course. You have to really sort of think, not as a player anymore. You have to think about what it's like if you're in a leading position. What right decision would you make? How would you treat that situation? I know John just mentioned my honesty, but that's one of those things I have to work on, because I can be very honest, but it's just a way of coming across, because now we're getting told how to deal with people and different sort of interactions, how to, manage different people. That sort of one-way treatment with everyone doesn't work when you're in a sort of global position, like a bigger management position. You need to be a bit more flexible, which I found, being the way I was, quite tough, because like I said, I'd always just say it straight away, this is how we do it. But in an office now, you have to be a lot more considerate about different people, and take opinions into consideration.
Do you still miss playing? You two? John, do you miss it?
I didn't play the last couple of years at Burnley. And I didn't enjoy there was a lot of things that went on. I didn't enjoy the environment so much. I love the lads. I love some of the staff, as you always do. But there was other things that I didn't agree with certain things. And the way it was in the end, I didn't enjoy it. I think I miss playing. I don't watch a lot of football back, but every now and then something pops up, or a goal or something, and then you miss it. You miss a certain side of it. You miss a Stoke side of it. I think the Irish side of it I really missed, because it was always a huge game whenever you went over, and that's like home for me. Being there whenever I go back to Ireland, it's like it's a second home. And the certain parts of football, Rob will say the same. Certain parts of football you'll miss, and other parts that I don't know. Going back to the whole people sucking up, or people being like this, that, and the other. I'd always do whatever I could for other people. Always, I've always been like that. In football, outside football, and I like it when I'm in that sort of environment. And sometimes when it's not like that, I don't enjoy it.
Would you have enjoyed playing his Leicester City team? Not just they won the Premier League, which will go down still. Whenever we play football ever again, it will still go down as the story. Were you surprised that he went on and did what he did at Leicester?
I'm not surprised he went on and did that, no. Everyone was devastated when he went.
Why did he go? I can't remember. Sorry, there's so much happens in the course. Why did he go, Rob?
I just didn't get enough game. Well, once Mark Hughes took over the job at Stoke, I managed to play the first sort of I think 8 or 9 games, and I got injured. And then obviously we brought in another centre back, Vorscheid, and he did well, and the team went on to finish highest ever in the Premier League. So I just didn't get a game basically. So just set out that season, and then 2015 or 14, 15, I went on loan to Leicester. Yeah, so just in case I didn't get a game. I was turning 30, so it was just at that point where I just needed to get out and play games.
You went on loan though when you had no chance to stay up, didn't you?
Yeah, I went alone initially for 6 months, and then like again, I played pretty much every game then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just made the move permanent. Was the time there, like I said, when you step into a change room and you at the right place. It was similar at Leicester. My first day there was like, all right, we're gonna get on here because it just fitted.
Did you get well with Nigel Pearson? Because he's quite straight talking as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, how can you not get on with Nigel? Top bloke. Used to look after me so well, because obviously he had the injuries come to Leicester, and he was very similar in his approach to Tony Pulis. To sort of just make sure you're right. I trust you. All I want you to do is be ready for the Saturday. But I believe in you, and I trust you to do the right thing. And again, I thrive on people giving me trust because I know I did the right thing by then to make sure I'm okay for the Saturday.
And this is about who.
Sorry, just to interrupt. There's a question just come up from Stefan.
Yeah.
I'll try something new, so if I can get him to ask it live. If I do this, Stefan, just try speaking into this. If you're into this, maybe you can ask the question directly.
Stefan, there.
Here we go.
Hello, are we on?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just interested specifically in what pros and former pros look to do after their career. Obviously, lots go into coaching, but are a majority looking at going into the role of a sporting director, or are you quite unique in that sense, Rob? And then secondly, Rob, why are you specifically choosing this route over coaching?
I mean, if I think about it, with all the players that I played with, plenty of them choose not to coach or be a manager or have anything to do with football. I was never interested in coaching. I never liked the idea of coaching 20 grown men or kids. So I was always interested in how football clubs run in the background. I was always interested how they see structured financially, transfers, getting players in, getting players out. I was always very interested in that. So the course almost came, kind of natural to me because that was my natural interest in it.
Okay. Answer the question? I think so. Sorry, Michael.
John, could you see yourself going down the CEO route now? Because clearly you've got a wealth of knowledge, experience, and you like to learn. You can tell that's from even just meeting you twice online now. Is that something you'll consider in the future?
Well, to answer Stefan's question as well, I was in at Stoke for a little while coaching, and I think I like almost the romance of coaching in a way of going through and having the same not praise, but the same feelings you get as a player on the side of a pitch and going through and coaching a team. But I think doing that for a little while, I was going to go on the course last year with Tony, but that came up. So I thought, you know what, you might not get the other chance. Let's have a go at it now. But I think knowing football clubs, how they work, the little that I do know behind the scenes, I think I'm the kind of person that can get people to work together, that can deal with different personalities, as Rob said before. In an office, it's not just about being straight or being like this or being like that. But then that's the same on a football pitch as well. I played with so many different players that someone needed an arm round, Someone need a kick up the backside. Someone need a stern word to them. And I see the same behind the scenes at football clubs as well. And it's getting everyone to work together as a group and sort of leading the team almost. Team, not in the terms of a football team, but teams in terms of bringing everyone together and directing people of how you see things and how you want things to be run.
I've got to ask the next question now. What did Robert need? What did Huthie need? Did he need an arm round him, a little shove now and again, or just an exercise bike?
He needed nothing. He just needs to batter Rob all the time. He didn't need anything. As I said, it was me and him. It was me and him in the gym every day. It was not many, but it was me and him. And he'd bring all these random exercises, get me into a few different things. But he was a machine. So he didn't need anything. He's self-motivation.
Is that because you weren't training as much because of keeping fit for Saturday?
Oh, I was training every day.
And then you go in the gym?
Yeah, gym before, gym after, but I'd train every day, and most days you'll be in pain. Probably for the past 5 years of my career, I'd wake up in a lot of pain. Get through the day, you do everything you can after training to be right for the next day, and that's the way I live for a long time.
Can I ask you a question, and Rob, can you answer as well? Did you, and I still work in football, I'm blessed to do so, did you admit to that pain, or did you just say, right, I've got to get through this? Because in the end, you can give people too much doubt about your state of fitness, couldn't you? Or did you just say, I'll get through this?
Depends if you can trust the physio.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and you need to trust your players. And like, if a player comes to you and goes, "Oh, this hurts, this hurts, this hurts," well, you tend to not take it too serious, do you? Yeah. But you know, when you get to know your players, and you know, the one time you go and see the physio, go, you know what, my knee or my ankle hurts, then they take it a bit more serious. But yeah, I mean, we used to have quite a few that just literally in a treatment room every day with something, and the physio would just shake his head. But yeah, some players just want to be told they're great and tough and all that sort of stuff. That's the other side of it.
Michael, just want to jump in here. It's Tony. Myself and John go back a number of years when I was a performance manager at Blackburn, and John started off his career there. And I have to. I've never seen anyone work as hard. What Rob's saying with regards to him as being a professional, he had that in his locker when he came through at Blackburn at 16, 17 years. And I don't know if you recall this, John, but you turned your ankle. Yeah. I remember this one particular day. He was on the treatment bed, and his ankle, honestly, it was black and blue. It was like a balloon. It was swollen, and we literally just strapped it, and he got on the pitch and went and played. So you know, the kind of character that he had as a young lad has followed him all the way through the career. He worked his absolute nuts off, and you know, credit to him to see where he's got to where he has now with that work rate.
Cheers, Tom. To be fair, I came into football very late. I only came to Blackburn when I was 15 or 16, year 11 in school. And I always go back to the start. I always had a point to prove, and I always felt like I couldn't let people down. So I would always carried on playing through everything, and that went through my career. So towards the end, saying being in years and years of pain, everyone knew because they were giving you the painkillers to take them, the anti-inflammatories. And I was on to be fair, Rob will say the same, I was on Voltarol, diclofenac for the past 3 years of my career, every day, maximum you could take, cortisones, everything. In the end, I ruptured my Achilles, and because it was on the same side as my knee, it was like, I'm never coming back from this. There's no chance. And really, that's what finished me off. But previous to that, I'd always go through everything, and that's the way I've always been. But I was always doing that for my family for when I finished, because I knew if I didn't play, the next contract wouldn't be around the corner. You wouldn't carry on playing. It only takes a bad injury or a bad turn. And I found that out from the lower leagues when I was at Wrexham and Chester. We had a lot of friends that got one injury and they finished the career because they went out the league. They couldn't get back in. And they found it very difficult. And then suddenly, when you're not getting back in League Two and you're playing non-league, then you've got to go and find a job straight away. So I had that work ethic all the way through. I'd always put yourself out on the pitch no matter what.
Elite sport is very unforgiving as well, isn't it? Like you said, if you miss one game and someone kind of comes in and plays in your position and scores a goal, then you you're not necessarily going to come straight back into the team. And that always sort of plays in the back of your mind, don't you? And I think you only miss games when you really, really can't play, because deep down you've got that fear of someone taking your place all the time. That's why, why we play with injuries and knocks and all that stuff, because the reality is someone's always right behind you to take your place.
Rob, final question. I'm going to we're going to have a little cheeky one that's snug with Brian and Tony. Have you handed your dissertation yet?
Yes, this morning.
Was it on time, or was it slightly after the old deadline? A little bit of extra?
Typical German style, 5 minutes early. All on time.
Can I ask you what it's on? Just a final question, like a good old-fashioned quiz show. Final question. What's your dissertation on?
Was that? Sorry.
What was your dissertation on?
We had to research Fleetwood Town if it's a high organization, a high-performing organization. And it was we had to do a presentation, but obviously with what's going on at the moment, we couldn't quite do it, so we just had to adapt a little bit and send it in.
Well, when I first met you, if you'd have told me you'd end up doing a master's as a sports directorship, I would have believed you, because you were always, as John said, you were always doing a little bit extra, and it's good to see you again. That haircut is lethal. John, it's good to meet you too, and the good news from your point of view is I'm done for the time being. I'm going to go and charge my bottle up, but I'm going to nip into the snug, because with a bit of luck, we'll find Brian Dean there. Is Brian, are you still there? He's gone.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Right. How are you, Brian?
Yeah, no, I'm still here. Good. I'm good, thank you. Just, I think the thing is now with this whole thing with the, I think everybody's going a little bit crazy with the lockdown, but I think one of the ways I kind of find myself keeping sane is listening to music and stuff like that from the past. But I've got 2 young kids as well, so that's quite challenging. But I'm okay. I've managed to lock myself away, so happy.
Listen, we've had Huth and Walters. We've now got Dean and Dorigo. So over to you. And you can if you want to get a little 4-ball going here, you can do, because you can introduce you can introduce to Tony Dorigo, the best export of Australian football.
Tony, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah, I hear you, mate. Listen, let me just give you a little bit of background from my point of view with regard to you, Tony. I mean, I first met you, I think, when we went to the England tour of Australasia, which was as soon as the season finished, we had 3.5 weeks in New Zealand, Australia, and Malaysia. I actually came back from that tour and I got glandular fever, but which is hardly surprising. I was out for about 6 weeks with that, but I think from then on, we kind of kept crossing paths, whether it was at Chelsea or, when at Leeds and so on, and then we became teammates. And we've kept in touch since. I always used to think that you were one of the brighter guys in the changing rooms, always focused. I kind of always kind of looked at you as a measure. I'm telling you this now, don't get a lump in your throat, but I always kind of looked at you as a measure of, somebody who I thought in the changing room was a really bright guy and should be involved in the game, all the way through. So, I mean, what's your thoughts, and what's your thoughts on that? And what do you think about, where people like myself, you, Robert, and Jonathan should be, where we should be aiming really within a sporting organisation?
I think what was interesting was what Robert said as well before, that not everyone wants to be a coach or manager, and I was kind of like that. I was the first one that actually the PFA subsidised a computer for, an Apricot F1. It must have been, I don't know, 30, 35 years ago, and I did a business course. So this is going back a long, long time. So even when I was playing, I was already thinking of other things. Football wasn't for me the be all and end all. I absolutely loved it. I gave everything to it. But certainly there were other things that I wanted to explore. And for me, after I finished, I'd always had one or two businesses along the way, but media was the easy one to go into. But then I went into property development.
Yeah.
And then for 6-7 years, I was down on the Algarve, and I had a team around me. I had a great project to get my teeth stuck into, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. But I had to learn a lot of new skills because really the sporting director role, so that wasn't available, kind of at that time.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the sporting director role. I mean, when I managed abroad, obviously I'm an Englishman going abroad, and they've got a sporting director. Their structure is head coach, sporting director, sports board, and I came back and I was like, well, I think this structure is really good because it's like the glue. That's how I see it. The sporting director's role is to kind of manage down, manage up, but also have a good understanding of both roles so that you're kind of bringing everything together. I know it doesn't really work like that in many clubs. I think a lot of clubs are ego-driven, but I mean, where do you see, like I said, where do you see people like ourselves? Do you think that there are places for people who want to go on that side rather than the coaching side?
Yeah, absolutely. And even now myself, I'm more involved with Leeds United now, and I go down there. I'm already thinking there's so many more things we should be doing. There's so many things we can build, and I'm talking more not on the pitch. I'm talking off the pitch. But it's with an understanding of what goes on the pitch. It's with understanding of the manager, the players, the understanding of the club itself. But there are so many things that that club could go and do, and I've got them in my head, and I want to try and I suppose put them into practice. But at the moment, I go down there, and as I said before, I talk to certain individuals, the heads of different departments, and they very much are isolated and looking after themselves to a certain point. Yeah. Which is understandable as well. But at the same time, all those, I think those skills and knowledge that you have got as a player, certainly if you've also got that other side to you, which, sounds like all you guys certainly have, you can see so many opportunities to build teams, people, ideas, strengthen, and the club itself into bigger and better things. So, for sure.
Tony, can I just say, and Brian, I go on before we were all shut down. I was a guest presenter on the VSI courses in which Rob is part of the cohort doing the sporting directorship. And I'm not just saying this because Tony Faulkner's listening, because it's part of it, with Andy, also the organisation. You could not get a smarter room of people than the people doing that sporting directorship course. You really couldn't. Because not only that they played the game, and you've got Chris Casper at Salford, and you've got Craig Honeyman, who's an agent. You've got people from Newcastle United. You've got the likes of Robert, who's only just stopped playing the last 2 years. I've spoken in a number of environments. You would not get, Tony, a sharper room of people than you do on that sporting directorship course. And believe you me, I get the train from Oxford to Manchester, and I don't fall asleep on that train journey because I know I've got to be on my toes, because they're as sharp as you can meet, and they've got so many more skills to offer the game rather than just being an ex-player.
Yeah, I agree. I think the problem we have is that traditionally players have been pigeonholed and have not been given a lot of credit. I think what happens is a footballer will do something stupid, and then everybody will think that all footballers are like that, and then you don't really get a platform or an opportunity to kind of state, what you're capable of doing. Plus, the other thing which we've touched on as well is the network. You have to have the network to be able to get into that higher echelon of, to kind of challenge for those jobs. And it really is. We need to start breaking the mold, because I see how many areas where people with that footballing knowledge of maybe 10, 15 years can actually make the club run more efficient. The first time I kind of picked up on that was when I was at Middlesbrough, and Marco Branca, who had been he'd been at Borough and had done well for a short time, came over, and he was the sporting director of Inter Milan. And I remember I thought, hang on a minute. He's been playing we've been playing, what has granted him that role? And they might look at it more from the point of view of, well, this is an ex-player. His experiences will help us. We can bring in somebody from the other side, the business side, which he won't have access to because he's been, you know, playing and training and everything. But I think that there's a massive role for ex-players who want to go down that road. Not every player is going to want to go into coaching.
Yeah, and especially if you've got a player that's got a real connection to a club, you know, if you played for a club for 10 years or, you know, got a real strong connection to it, then it kind of makes sense because you get what the club's all about, what the area is all about, what the support is like. And sometimes when these roles get filled, you know, you've got sort of this outside person coming in without having the knowledge of what it's like to work or to play for the club, which I think is massively underestimated. You know, I mean, I played for Stoke and for Leicester, one city club. You know, the connection to the local area is massive. You know, and many people don't necessarily know that stuff. They just come in, look at the numbers, look at the scouting setup. But you know, when a club is so connected to the community, you need to be really connected to them and make sure that we all build together.
I think what's interesting as well. What's interesting as well, Brian, is that, you know, when you're playing and you have your manager who you look up to, sometimes the most important person is the coach. He's the link between the player and the manager. And when you have that sort of organisation, that when that works well, you know, suddenly the team plays well. I think it's the same when on the exec side to the playing side. If you have someone that understands both roles, that must be so much more positive for both.
Yeah. No, and again, guys, just drawing from our playing and having certain different coaches, don't you find that what you tend to do is you look at who your coaches are and you'll pinch bits from their management styles to actually make your style complete. So, you know, you'll like Robert said that he's worked with Nigel Pearson and maybe he's picked up things from him. You said Ron Saunders, you know, John, I know you played under Mick McCarthy. So there's all things that we can pick up and use actually to improve ourselves and develop our own personalities as well. That's my thought, really.
It's one question I was always asked. Someone said, "Oh, who's the best manager you played under?" And I went through it. I was like, I started a youth team at Blackburn, and I went Sam Allardyce at Bolton, Peter Taylor at Hull, Mark Wright at Chester, Dennis Smith at Wrexham, Jim McGillen, Roy Keane, Tony Pulis, Mark Hughes, and then with Ireland they had Trafford and Martin O'Neill, and you couldn't get a different set of managers, but managers that have done everything in the game as players and as managers. Yeah. And I'd never say someone was the best. I'd always say I'll take something from each different manager. Always do the same. Yeah. I'd always listen to what they're telling every other player on the pitch. If they're telling the defenders, I go over and listen to what they were saying, because it was always important. It was always important to me as a player, and I think there was no best manager for me. They all had different qualities.
What was can I ask one question there, please? Trapattoni, because that was a different appointment, and obviously he didn't speak fluent English, I think, at the time. How did that work? That dynamic work?
It was funny sometimes because in the meetings he kept calling Shane Long Sean Long, and this went on for years, and Shane Long didn't like it. But he was good. He gave me my debut for Ireland, but it was very basic. There was nothing overly complicated about how he wanted to play, and it was different as an international manager because you're not buying players in, but he seemed to assemble a really good group of players. And obviously you only have probably a smaller pool in a way to pick from because you only have the players that are eligible for the country. But we had such a good group of players. It was a player dynamic of how we all worked together and how we all got on together, because to stay 2, 3, 4 weeks away at a time as a group, you need to all get on. And it was similar to Stoke, but it was very basic in the message he wanted to get across, and almost baffling in a way that he'd won everything as a player and a manager, and yet it was so basic and it wasn't overly complicated what he wanted to get across.
That surprised you, because we hear there must be a secret, but there wasn't a secret. It was just simple structures, was it?
I think it's, and this is what I've learned as a player, and that's what I want to take into further. It's not so much teaching people new things. I think it's getting them to getting all different personalities and individuals to pull in the right direction, and getting people to trust you. What the message you're telling them is the right thing to do, because we're all individuals. You take everyone on here now as a group, but if you get everyone pointing in there, thinking the same way, and you might need different techniques of different things with different people. And he was very good at that, I thought. And other managers have been as well.
Just funny, Tony, Tony, come back to the Leeds thing last week with the sad passing of Norman Hunter, because he was taken terribly ill with a wretched coronavirus. He had over 700 games, didn't miss a game for 5 seasons at one point. And I was reading out before we started broadcasting that most of that team played 700 times for Leeds. What was the impact he and that team had on that club and that city? To both of you who are Leeds legends in your own right, but the impact someone like Norman Hunter and that era still has on that city and that club?
Well, basically, it's the foundations that the club were built on, because they were so successful. As you rightly said there, the number of games they played together, they kind of grew up together as men, and the things that they won were just incredible. Obviously, the style they played, but they really did fight for one another. They had a great camaraderie, and when I went to the club in '91, a lot of those guys were still around. They loved to come down and watch. They still would give you the odd comment and help and advice here and there. I think Brian, you had some help as well from one or two of the guys, and they meant everything. And since I've come back now and doing more with the club, I've worked with these guys as well, and they're wonderful. I look up to them. I will always look up to them, and Norman in particular. I work with him in the Norman Hunter suite, every single home match, and it's going to be strange not seeing my pal there. But Friday was really hard, but they meant everything, and that's why I think around the world Leeds are held in the esteem they are, and that's when the players that come later, Dino, myself, and a lot of others, we come because of that great 70s side.
Brian, final question: who do you look at? Who helped you from that extraordinary group of? They're a band of brothers, weren't they? As Rob and John mentioned earlier, when it comes together, who helped you a great deal from that Leeds team?
So I said the other day. So basically, when I joined Leeds for a record fee at the time, and I came from Sheffield United, and we played a total a style of football which a lot of people said was direct, but it kind of suited me, because it meant I was getting the ball and I was running at people and all the rest of it. But when I came to Leeds, it was slightly different, and it took me a while to settle down. And I remember I used to go home after games, and I'd go down to my mum's, and my mum used to listen to the games on the radio. And if you've ever played for Leeds, you'll know how it's a really intimidating atmosphere, whether you're an away player or supporter, but also if you're not particularly doing well at home, then the crowd they kind of can get on your back. And I like I say, in my first year, I went for a lot of money. I didn't settle straight away, but I used to go home to my mum's, and my mum, she'd listen to the games on the radio, and she'd say, Brian, she said, you've got a friend in that Norman Hunter, because he always talks well of you and what you do in the game. And, that helped me through, because, it's very intimidating when you go to a club like Leeds, and they've got these guys who everybody in the city reveres them. And then, you kind of realize that they're on your side. And Norman, he's like a bit like the Godfather. Everybody loves him. Nobody has a bad word to say. He's just hasn't got a bad bone in his body. And he will be missed down there, because whether you're kind of 38 or whether you're kind of like me, 52, or Tony, he treated everybody the same. He was exactly the same with people. And, he used to muck, and he was just like one of the lads. So I'd have to say it was Norman as well. But Eddie Gray's a great guy. Paul Reaney as well. I mean, Tony, you know those guys really well, don't you?
Yeah, I do. And yeah, they are great. I mean, to see them as well, I think that's what I think football certainly has given us, those sort of memories. But when you get back together, you muck about like you were in the changing room again. And even they did it at 70, 75. They were still mucking about. It was brilliant to see. It really was.
Well, listen, one of the lucks of this wretched situation, because Tony Faulkner and Andy and Tim had an idea to get us together for a pint once a week, and I've had a pint with Stuart Pearce, with who did we have last week? We had Jonathan Norcroft from the Sunday Times, and meet Brian Dean. Now I've had Tony Dorigo, Brian Dean, back with Robert Huth and John Walters. So I'd rather I didn't meet you like this, but it's been a pleasure to meet you all. I'm going to hand you back to Tony in a minute. For the Shankly Arms for 1 week will be called the Hunter Arms for 1 week, because I think that was a special man, and they all averaged about 700 games, and I'm still getting my head around that in data science era. So gentlemen, thank you all very much indeed for your time, for your stories, and I'm going to hand you back to Tony in Manchester. Tony.
Yeah, thanks guys. Really enjoyable evening, and appreciate your time and joining us this evening for a pint. I'll be in touch with all of you after this. But next week we've got joining us for a drink is the outspoken Professor Chris Brady. Chris won't hold back. He says what he thinks, and Chris is going to be discussing the current world we're living in at this moment in time and the challenges that it's bringing to sport. His area is what he calls the geopolitics of sport, but he's got a very colourful background, ranging from the military, professional sport, mergers and acquisitions, and he's held multiple positions in some of the country's leading academic institutes. So if you want a little bit of controversy, Chris is the person to bring that into your life into next week. So in between time, guys, hope you all stay safe, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tony.
Cheers.
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 Cheers.